Hello there, welcome to the Big Idea Food Podcast. This is Andrew Ive, your host from Big Idea Ventures, and today we'll be talking with Aleem, the founder and CEO of Wild4 Snacks. So this is an interesting company. Normally we talk about alternative proteins and other sort of innovations in that space. Wild4 is using an ingredient from Africa called teff. Teff is the smallest grain in the world, has high nutrition and nutty flavor, really interesting ingredient. So let's talk to Aleem and find out what he has to say about developing Wild4 Snacks. If you have any questions or comments, please do leave them at the end of the podcast or YouTube video, whichever platform this is on. Please do like and subscribe so that we can send you more podcasts, more videos later. Thanks very much. Let's get into the conversation with Aleem. Hey Aleem, how are you?
I'm great, Andrew. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too, sir. Welcome to the Big Idea Food Podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we've known each other now probably a year, maybe a bit longer than that.
Yep, about a year.
About a year. And we've worked a little bit together. I think this is a great opportunity for people to find out about you and also to find out about your company. Would you mind telling us a little bit about what you're up to?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I would love to. I am the founder and CEO of For Superfoods, and we help active families live healthier through a line of high protein, nutritious and delicious snacks based upon the ancient Ethiopian grain teff. And teff is a secret source of lasting energy for Ethiopia's elite marathon runners.
So teff. So in terms of what people can actually consume to get this teff that is sort of the secret energy source for marathon runners, what are you selling them? What do they get? Where do they go? What do they taste? What is it?
Yeah, we're selling high protein air pop chips at Whole Foods in the Metro New York area and all across America on Amazon Prime.
Fantastic. So, and how did you guys come up with this? Is there a story behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was inspired to start the brand when I worked for the Ethiopian Agricultural Transformation Agency, helping some of Ethiopia's 6 million farmers improve their yields. And I realized that if there was an opportunity to connect African Teff farmers to international markets, there would be a huge opportunity to improve their livelihoods, but also to provide nutrition and functional ingredients that would help consumers drive their nutrition forward.
Fantastic. Let's break down what teff exactly is. It's what? Take us through the product, what the actual core ingredient is.
Yeah, teff grows. It's a grass, so it looks almost like wheat, but it's gluten-free, and it's the world's smallest grain. And because of that, by virtue of its ratio of the outside to the inside of the grain, teff has more fiber than any other product because all the fiber is covered in the shell, or is embodied in the shell of the grain. And so it gives it some really unique, interesting attributes. It's got a nice, mild, nutty flavor. If you've had Ethiopian food before, you may have tasted teff in Ethiopia's flat, spongy bread, injera, and that's fermented. And when it's not fermented, it has kind of a nice, mild, whole grain flavor to it, which is really appealing.
So a good energy source, a great source for fiber. And a nice nutty flavor. Any other aspects that people should be aware of?
Yeah, it has about 12% protein, which is very similar and comparable to quinoa. And from a sustainability perspective, we see that teff is a drought-resistant crop. It uses maybe up to half of the water that corn uses. And so that it's going to play an increasingly important role as our climate goes through increasing variations over the next several decades until we kind of sort out our climate change challenges.
So right now, the core ingredient is sourced from Ethiopia. You think it may have applications in other places, or?
Yeah, I think so. Teff is indigenous to Ethiopia, and it's used there. To have a meal in Ethiopia is to have injera, and the best injera is made with 100% pure teff. But it has a flavor profile that can fit many cultures, many cuisines. I think it could be widely applicable across the globe.
And is it tough to get, in the sense of, are you needing to develop a supply chain from Ethiopia back to the US so that you can manufacture your air popped chips?
So the supply out of Ethiopia is definitely a challenge. However, other African countries are growing teff. For instance, South Africa has been growing it for several years now, and been growing it for the international natural foods market. And so that's readily exportable, and it supports livelihoods of African farmers as well. So in that sense, we've been able to work with some of the world's largest mills that have deep and diverse supply chains to work with South African farmers and source from there.
So why, I mean, obviously we should all care, but is there a reason why you in particular care about farmers in Ethiopia?
Yeah, it's really because of my work experience there, working for the government of Ethiopia and getting to know some of the farmers. And specifically having spent some time with them, I learned that the farm gate price of teff, the price that farmers receive, is roughly 30% below the wholesale price. And so the opportunity here is that for farmers to connect directly with brands, receive access to the wholesale price, and in turn use those higher profits to invest in their own agricultural output, such as better seeds and fertilizer, but also into their own livelihoods, like medicines for the family when they get sick, or uniforms for their kids to go to school. We think there's a virtuous cycle. Farmers get better prices for their grain, that their families prosper even more.
And you mentioned working in Ethiopia for the government. This was you're walking past a notice board at college one day. There's an Ethiopian advertisement for you or someone to go work with them. Is that how it happened, or is there more to it?
Yeah, no, you're right. There's much more to the story. My mother's family is actually from East Africa. She grew up there, and so did my grandfather, in Tanzania and in Kenya. That's what originally led me out there, was to explore my roots in East Africa. My first job was in Kenya, working in Western Kenya, working on drinking water safety projects in rural and agricultural communities. And I realized that what was really, really important to these communities was agriculture, prices they were getting for their crops, how to get new seeds, new planting practices. And through that opportunity, I became really passionate about agriculture and learned about this opportunity at the Ethiopian Agricultural Transform Agency from a friend who was living in Addis at the time. And I leapt upon that opportunity to submit an application to work for them.
Fantastic. So now you're in San Francisco. You've kind of seen a great ingredient that you think has the potential to be beneficial to not just Ethiopia, but other places as well, both in terms of its nutritional profile, its fiber content, the taste, and the so on, smallest grain in the world. Take us through how you ultimately arrived at an air popped chip that you're now selling in Whole Foods and direct to consumer.
Yeah, during my time in Ethiopia, I saw this opportunity that I thought could be really big. I thought it could be the next quinoa, and decided to come back to the U.S. to get my graduate degree. And when I came back, I saw that quinoa had gone from the Whole Foods salad bar to huge bags in Costco, and took that opportunity in grad school to write a business plan, my first draft of the business plan, and collected some advisors and showed them the idea. And they said, well, this is great on paper, but prove to us that you can sell anything, just anything with teff in it, to your target customer. And that set me down an R&D path with, you just imagine bags of teff flour and other gluten-free flours in my kitchen in Cambridge. And we started mixing different blends. And the first product we came up with was actually a pancake mix. and commercialized that in online and in Cambridge. Was starting to sell it through our website, and we saw a 30% repeat customer rate within the first few months, and took that data out to stores and sold it to independent natural food retailers in the greater Boston area. Pretty soon, larger natural food retailers were knocking on our door trying to get a hold of the product. And that really forced us to circle up with our advisors again and say, hey, do we want to take a pancake mix national? Do we want to be able to, can we support this product? And that led to a broader process where we looked across a range of categories, a range of opportunities. We looked at bars, pastas, cereals, and identified the salty snack category as an opportunity to do something incremental and to do something really tasty that customers would find valuable.
So does the pancake mix still exist or not?
The pancake mix does not exist anymore. We hopefully one day will bring it back as a seasonal item for our early fans and supporters.
So a popped snack, so a popped chip. What's it similar to, or is it not similar to anything? Is it completely different from everything? What would you consider to be your kind of, not competitors per se, but if someone was to look at your product and look at somebody else's, would they see any similarities to other things?
Yeah, I think it has kind of the air popped attributes of a pop chip, but it has kind of the heartier texture of a pita chip. So in some ways, you get the best of both worlds. You get an air pop chip that isn't fried, but you get a heartier texture of a pita chip, and you get 5 or 6 grams of protein per serving, which is 2 to 3 times the amount of protein you would get from other chips in this product.
So is it keto friendly? Or, I mean, it's probably not completely keto, but is it keto friendly?
It's not keto friendly. Keto folks are really focused on reducing carbs. This is a whole grain product with carbs. One of the interesting attributes about Teff is its starches, and it's made up of resistant starches, which our body digests slower, like fiber. And these are something that in turn feed friendly gut bacteria that support the growth of short chain fatty acids, which actually in turn counteract diabetes and obesity. So it's a fascinating crop that we're still learning more about. And part of my mission is really to bring more attention to this crop so that more research can be done on it as well.
So where do people find the product if they want to check out, the product itself, the packaging, etc.? Where can they go?
Yeah, if they happen to be in New York, they can go to Whole Foods, any of the Whole Foods from Connecticut to New York down to Jersey, and anywhere else in the world. If they want to take a look at it, they can look at it on Amazon by searching Wild for Teff. So
I went hunting for it in Florida. It's not in Florida yet?
Not yet.
That's what I was like, damn it. I'm looking, I'm scanning the aisles in Whole Foods, desperately looking for your product here. But okay, so not here yet. When are we going to see it down in other places aside from New York and Connecticut and New Jersey?
Yeah, we're working on a lot of exciting opportunities. Currently, we think between Q3 and Q4 this year, we'll be able to see it showing up in retailers and in other regions across America.
So I just managed to find it on Amazon. Wild for tortilla chips made with teff and ancient grain, high plant protein, superfood vegan snacks, gluten-free, sweet and smoky barbecue. That sounds good. Wild for. Okay, so you've got a sweet and smoky barbecue flavor. I'm going to open up the store so I can see what other flavors you have. Okay, and a sea salt. 6 grams of protein in a bag. Okay, so yeah, it does look a little bit like air popped, but I can see what you're saying about that sort of pita chip or pita chip, depending on who you are and where you are. The kind of pita chip angle to the texture and so on, and high in protein. This looks like a great product. I'm so glad we invested in
it. We're happy to be your partners.
So you launched the product when?
We launched the product about 2 years ago.
Right.
In Whole Foods in the Northeast. And we really learned a lot about how to build a brand in retail, in brick and mortar, in Whole Foods, and that was a great experience for us. And then last year we've taken on D2C through Amazon and are also learning a lot about how to reach customers across the U.S. online.
Awesome. Where do you see Wild For going over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years? If everything goes to your plan, where is this business going to be in 3 to 5 years' time?
Yeah, we hope that it'll be a familiar household name in 3 to 5 years. And we hope that folks will be able to find it in mainstream retailers across America, and big box stores, and in natural food retailers. We expect to come up with a set of new flavors. We're working on a delicious vegan white cheddar jalapeno right now, which we hope will be out before the end of the year. And yeah, we anticipate building out some additional flavors. And we also hope that customers in 3 to 5 years will be talking about Teff this in a similar way that they're talking about quinoa today.
And so what do you think are the key challenges in terms of achieving that sort of vision of where Wild For is going to be in 3 to 5 years? What are some of the things you're going to need to solve or address?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to continue to figure out how to build our presence in brick and mortar retail, and work with retailers who want to help tell the story of Teff. And we'll have to help complement our in-store presence with online storytelling, working with influencers who can tell the story of new grains, new crops, and be able to have people learn about the importance and value that Teff offers them before they even come into the store as well.
Okay. And what about from a company perspective? I'm wondering if there are things that you need to, from your point of view, you need to sort of address and build so that you can be, a stronger, bigger, faster moving company, whether that's, I don't know, team building or, whatever.
Yeah, we continue to look for fantastic folks with deep experience in sales in natural foods across the U.S. And so, looking for professionals with industry experience in selling specifically salty snacks. We think there's some real specific category knowledge that can be really valuable. And of course, we continue to look for great folks who've invested in other snack brands in the past, and look for a continued partnership with investors seasoned in the industry.
So basically, sales folks, people with experience in chips, investors who are sort of knowledgeable about this space. Those are some of the things that you see as being critical for building this business.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so. From a fundraising perspective, I'm guessing that's like all startups, like all young companies, that's been an interesting road to date. Any sort of, without naming names, any sort of horror stories or any sort of interesting learnings that others coming up behind you should be aware of from a fundraising perspective?
Yeah, luckily we haven't had any horror stories. I think.
Okay.
I think we've been lucky to have great folks who are both values aligned with us, but also are supporters of our cause as well. So I think that's been great. And I think I think one thing that's been important, not kind of understanding the length of the pandemic and how that had kind of changed brick and mortar retail. Was to be able to maintain a low burn rate. I think that's been critical and important as we've kind of adjusted to unforeseen circumstances over the last year. And then I think this idea of velocity and momentum, I think, is really important as well to share with other founders. As you can build excitement around achieving a milestone, and translate that milestone achievement into velocity and momentum with conversations with investors, I think can be really important. Giving them a sense of urgency of coming into the round, I think that can be a really important thing to do. And it can be challenging, but I think one way to do it is around traction in the business.
So how do you think you do that? I mean, one of the things when I've been speaking to founders, getting investors to believe there's a sort of a fear of missing out or some form of burning platform or need to make a decision. Most investors don't feel that. They feel like, they're in the driving seat. They can kind of make the decision when they're ready. And sometimes that means never. What do you think some of the ways are for founders to be able to create that sense of urgency?
Yeah, I think one way is in brick and mortar retail. I think the launch of a product in a new retailer can often be because there's a deadline to launch the product, to order inventory, and I think that can really be used as a mechanism and is to generate both excitement, but also time pressure to say, hey, we've got this great, fantastic national retail rollout opportunity. We need cash in the bank to spend on inventory. We know how this will turn from inventory investments into revenue. And that can really kind of, I think, help drive those conversations forward.
And have the ability to say to those investors, we're about to get more distribution from a new account. That's going to change our velocity as a company. That's going to change our revenues. When that happens, that will increase our valuation. And you won't be able to get as quite a good a deal then as now. So you need to make a decision before we pull the trigger on that distribution and that revenue, because unfortunately we're going to have to change our valuation at that point, and you're going to get less of the company for your investment.
Yeah, I think really kind of closing the logic there, closing the loop can really help that process.
Awesome. So we've covered the product, we've covered the story of how you got here, we've talked a little bit about fundraising. From a startup perspective, is this something you would do again? Would you recommend this to others, i.e. starting a company? And by the way, starting a snack company is particularly tough. I mean, there are big companies dominant in this space. They own a heck of a lot of the shelf space. It's tough for the little brands to support their products and get them the kind of distribution they need to be a fast growing company. So would you recommend starting a company to a potential future food founder? And would you recommend they get involved in snacks?
I think I would recommend it to them, but if they had a really clear incremental value proposition to the retailer and to the consumer. I think if the product looked and tasted very similar or had ingredients very similar to what was on the shelf, I would offer kind of warn some caution. But I think one of the big upsides of snacks and food is that salty snacks is a huge $20 billion category. Customers are willing to try new products. So there's an opportunity, if it tastes really good, to drive trial and then some loyalty. And I think that some of these bigger incumbent players have really actually made their snacks less filling or less nourishing in order to get customers to eat the whole bag. So that's created a problem in the marketplace for some customers where they actually still want that salty snack product, but they still want to get some nutrition and some nourishment from it. And so we think we're solving a problem for them.
How do you see the snack category segmenting? Because once upon a time it was, Lay's chips and it was just a kind of quick snack, a little bit of salt, a little bit of savory at a certain time of the day. And I see the category segmenting into all sorts of different benefits, all sorts of different deliverables. They're sort of segmenting the consumer differently in terms of, parents versus athletes. There's all sorts of different use cases. How do you see the market segmenting, and where, from your point of view, is the most growth and most interest for you personally?
Yeah. So I think, the biggest segment still today, Andrew, is, traditional potato. Potato chips are biggest in mainstream and conventional grocery, and then tortilla chips traditional tortilla chips are biggest in natural, conventional. And then outside of those two categories, you kind of have interesting functional ingredient products. We've seen plantain chips become more and more mainstream. We've seen chickpea chips come in there. We've also seen grain-free, paleo, keto products become their own segment, their own subsegment. We've seen other, so I would describe kind of a whole nother subcategory as interesting functional ingredients. Cauliflower has become another one. We've seen chips boasting quinoa and probiotics. So I think and I think, and we're bringing Teff to the table here, which nobody else is doing. And I think that this is an opportunity for growth. I think, the potato and tortilla chips are, traditionally growing at kind of with population 2, 3, 4% a year, but most of the growth is actually double digit plus growth is really coming from these more interesting functional ingredients that are showing up in the salty snack aisle.
So it is actually possible now, if they're smart about it, for people to not only get the satisfaction of a quick snack, but actually to get, whether some functional benefit from their snack. So a kind of a satisfaction of the kind of crave, but also some form of benefit to the body.
Yeah, exactly. Some sort of feeling of satiation, a feeling that you've put away your hunger for at least a couple hours till you can make dinner. So I think I think we are offering more than just momentary bliss now in the functional ingredients of the salty snack category.
And also in your case, you're benefiting the farmers who are, creating the raw ingredient in the beginning of the process.
Absolutely. Yeah. Helping them access new markets is, I think, a critical part of why I do this business.
And are people using your products in more ways than just popping open the bag and grabbing a handful of snack? Are they using it in recipes and things like that?
They often are using it with dips. We see that our sea salt pairs really well with guacamole or hummus. People often supplement their salad or sandwich at lunch with this product. And we've even seen folks tweeting about discovering it in Whole Foods who are buying something on the Whole Foods hot or salad bar and then putting a few Teff chips alongside it. So it's really cool to see how folks are finding new ways to incorporate Teff nutrition into their meals and into their dips and sides and snack habits.
Do you see there's the potential based on that kind of usage to partner with companies that, for example, are in the dip space, whether that's, a Sabra or similar? Are there opportunities to partner?
Yeah, I think that, that's something that we think would be really exciting to be able to work with a large dip player to be able to merchandise the product alongside each other in store. We think it could be a really cool way to drive discovery and trial in retail and brick and mortar. That could be really fun for customers.
How do kids respond to this product?
Yeah, so that's one of the really fun things is when I was doing demos in Whole Foods was being able to have kids try the product, love it, and then bring their parents over and ask them to buy it. Kids respond really well to the sweet and smoky barbecue because it the little bit of sweetness kind of draws them in, and then the traditional barbecue flavors are kind of really interesting and exciting to kids.
Not spicy?
Not spicy at all.
How are you getting the barbecue flavor?
The barbecue, we've got some, we used a little bit of smoked paprika, but we also use some garlic and other spices, but we do it without having to add chilies.
Oh, okay, great. Awesome. So, and in terms of manufacturing this product, you guys manufacture it in your own facility, or have you found a larger organization that can do it for you? How's that working out?
Yeah, we found a larger organization that is manufacturing it for us, and we worked. We give them our product specifications, and then they make it to our order, and then we take it and we focus on bringing it into retailers, working with them to put it in the right spot, and developing smart promotional strategies around it.
Perfect. What were some of the reasons why you decided to go for a larger organization from a manufacturing perspective?
Yeah, we think they offer us the ability to scale cost efficiently and quickly. So we were able to raise money and put it directly into inventory rather than putting it into machines and capital expenses that would actually take a lot more capital to do that. And quite frankly, we wanted to work with folks who had the expertise, decades of making snacks worth of experience to leverage that rather than to have to learn that ourselves directly.
So, consistent quality, high quality sourcing of great ingredients, etc. I would have thought, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely made the process much faster to launch a brand.
So has this been something that you've been able to do without growing an enormous team as you've outsourced that aspect of production?
Yeah, I've been able to do it pretty leanly, and I've been more able to. I am the team.
You empty the waste paper basket as well as being the CEO.
That's right. Soup to nuts over here.
So if you got run over by a bus, that means the whole brand would disappear, right?
Let's hope I don't get run over by a
bus, my
goodness.
Andrew. You're not allowed out. From now on, stay indoors.
The bubble boy.
Absolutely. Okay, so US is step one. Grocery sector is currently where you're at, particularly Whole Foods. Direct to consumer. By the way, while we were talking, I know that I kind of kept focused on the camera, but while we were talking, I just placed an order for 8 bags of the barbecue from Amazon for $44, which is great. I'm looking forward to it arriving on my doorstep on Tuesday. But what it did say is that the product is getting sold out. I think it told me that there were 8 left. So people, if they're listening to this, should rush, because if we have more than 8 people listening to this podcast, it's quite possible that there won't be any product left when you come to go order yours. So does it ever go out of stock because people are sort of jumping at it quite quickly?
If it does, it goes out temporarily, but we get the inventory alerts pretty quickly and are able to resend in product to Amazon for shipment pretty quickly. So if you do order the last bag, don't worry, we'll send more in right away.
Okay, so you got 8. There's 8 left in inventory right now, just so you know.
Perfect. We're on it.
Okay, so. Couple of quick questions just remaining, and then we'll disappear. One piece of advice for a founder, a startup founder in the food category.
I would say one is it takes time in food, and just be prepared to have a longer time horizon and be patient. I think that goes hand in hand with common advice of being persistent and not giving up. But I think the patience around longer term category, if you're looking at brick and mortar, I think longer term category review cycles, that's when a retailer will decide to bring in a new product. And I think thinking, the other one that I wish I'd known, or it would have been nice to know at the outset, would be to understand a little bit more about field merchandising and work that's done in stores at the shelf level. That can be really, really important in the early days, especially in natural stores, to drive velocities, drive growth, drive awareness of the brand. So those 2 things to think about for food founders.
Yeah, let's unpack that product review cycle. What's that, and how do they take that into consideration as they're building their business?
Yeah, so retailers, will break down their inventory of thousands and thousands of SKUs into subcategories, and then once or twice a year they'll review that category of products, and that cycle will take 3 to 4 months of review, where they'll take in products, they'll review price, cost, promotional strategies, review it against other products they have on the shelf. They'll also review products they have on the shelf today and see who's underperforming as well. And that'll give them an idea of which products they want to bring in. And then after 3 months, in approximately 3 months after you submit, you'll find out if you'll go live onto that retailer's shelf. And that can be anywhere from an additional 3 months to 6 months out from that. So depending on when you start your conversations with retailers, you could be looking anywhere from a year to 9 months before the product actually hits the shelf through a category review process.
So if, for example, you launch your product in a January, February, March, and the review cycle for a particular retailer isn't until Q4 or October through December, you may have to wait 9 months before you can even start the kind of sales cycle, engagement cycle with that company, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And then that could be an additional 6 to 9 months from that beginning of that review cycle to hitting the shelves.
So it could be as long as 18 months, maybe more. And that's if they say yes straight away.
That's right, yeah. So be prepared for something like that. And I think one way to get ahead of it is even to start planning the manufacturing launch date around the key retailer in advance.
So if that's the case, how do you get samples to a retailer if you're not going to pull the trigger on a large production run because you don't want to be sitting on inventory that becomes stale over time?
Yeah, I think there's two approaches that I would advise founders to think about. One is to identify buyers or members of teams called foragers, whose job is to kind of identify local entrepreneurs, and send them even pre-production samples just to get their feedback.
Pre-production samples. What do you mean?
Yeah, pre-production samples would be stuff that's run on a line, but it may not have the fully finished packaging. It may not. It may just be in kind of a silver plastic bag, but it's something that's come out of an R&D process that is fairly representative of what you think you could make at scale. That can be a great way just to get the retailer bought into the product. And then, sometimes if it's a first-time founder or a brand that's launching a brand new product before, they'll want to see the product, in a finished bag before they place a purchase order or finally approve the product. And one thing I would advise founders to think about is discussing with your manufacturer what a line trial might look like. So that's something that's not on the R&D line, comes off the full production line, and it's finished in finished packaging. You'll pay more per unit for it because it won't be a full scale production run, but you'll get a couple pallets of inventory, a few hundred units of product that you can then show to these retailers. And then I would advise founders to sell the remaining inventory online, set up a Shopify account and start selling online and drive some traffic to your brand and sell that inventory through. And hopefully in that time, you'll have gotten a retailer committed to bringing the product in and giving you a yes and a day for launch for the product.
So in that case, you'll potentially need to commit to a minimum order quantity with those manufacturers who will do a kind of small limited line. That minimum order quantity of that limited line still could cost, I don't know, depending on the product. And this happens not just across snack, it's across the whole food. It still could cost 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, depending on the minimum order they need before they'll start producing it, right?
Yeah, it can definitely be upward. It can definitely be in that range. I think we were able to do it a little bit more cost effectively, perhaps, around between $10,000 and $20,000 initially. But yeah, it can definitely be an expensive way to start. But if you feel confident, and that's perhaps why I would encourage the first step in the process, taking product off the R&D line, even if it's not fully packaged, and start getting some sense of interest in the product from retailers.
Absolutely. And when they go through all of these different steps and processes to get to the point where a retailer says, yes, we'll give you 100 doors or store. When we talk, anyone listening, we talk about doors being, doors and stores are the same thing, but people talk doors. I don't know why, they just do. So there's something to learn the lingo if you want to get into one of the retailers. Once you get into those doors, you could find, if your product doesn't have the right velocity, i.e. the number of sales required on a week-by-week basis, that when the account goes through a review again next year, if you don't have the velocity, your product could be taken off, right?
Yep, that's correct.
So what do people need to do once the product is on shelf to make sure that they're selling product and they've got the velocity necessary to stick around?
Yeah, so we found what we would call kind of the we call the 3D strategy to grocery retail success, and that is demos, displays, and discounts. And we find this is an effective way to drive trial. And really, I think the key is not to do them separately, but to do them synchronously around the same time. Another important thing to think about is that when retailers plan their promotions or their discounts on products in stores, oftentimes that can be 3 to 4 month lead time. So get on that schedule early, figure out when your product's going to launch, and don't wait till you're actually in stores to ask about a promotional schedule. Ask about it once you get approved. And then so get that on the books early. And when that's on the books, use that event, that promotional discount event, to go into stores, either you personally or with your field team members, and talk to store managers about this promotion, and ask them for better spots on the shelf or additional spots off the shelf, over the salad bar, by the checkout, at the end of the aisle. It's hard to overstate the importance of this. This is critical. And then simultaneous to this, I would schedule a demo in these stores when the product will be on display and on discount, and sample the product. Get people to try it. You can do it yourself, or you can also hire brand ambassadors to go out and help you do this with you, alongside you, in multiple stores at the same time. And this combination of activities will really help drive the velocity rates up, and get people to try the product for the first time. And if it's great, they'll come back again in a few weeks and pick it up.
So a couple of things that occur to me as you're speaking, Aleem, and I think that last point is probably the most important. You can do all the demos, all the discounts, et cetera, as possible. But if ultimately the product, when it goes into people's mouths, isn't compelling and moreish, where people are like, oh, I've got to buy myself another bag of this product. If it's just a kind of a meh or an okay product, all of the promotions, discounts, et cetera, in the world are not going to make that brand work.
Yeah, that's correct.
It just isn't. The other, and I think the other thing that Aleem mentioned, which I think is just a really, really great point. If I've seen different approaches here. If a store says to you, we want to put it into all 300 stores or all 500 stores, that's a risk. On the one hand, you're going to be super excited about, oh my goodness, we're in 500 stores now. But if you don't have the capacity to really support those 500 stores and in some way encourage, whether it's through a direct relationship with the store and the employees, or promotions, etc., if you can't support those 500 stores, it's a risk. So am I wrong, Aleem? Is that?
No, that's absolutely right. I think until the brand has some exposure and awareness, it can definitely be a risk. And I think that's one of the reasons we stayed close to the Metro New York area, is that in a focused geography, we've been able to provide much more support for those stores than we would have if we had those stores spread across the country. And
you can figure out what works.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out what works. You can fit like your 3D approach. You're learning all the time how to make people love your products, which, again, it's about getting it into their mouths and having them taste it. That's the most important thing. But you're learning what works, and then you can roll that out across more regions as and when you get those opportunities.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I think a focused strategy is really important.
Aleem, this has been amazing. I'm sure that people want me to ask you another 110 questions. But maybe the best thing to do in this situation is for people who are listening to this who have questions I haven't asked, whether they're potential consumers, potential partners, potential retailers, or distribution partners in that sense, or even investors, is for them to reach out to you directly. What's a good way for people to learn about Wild For and to engage with you around your company and your brand and your products?
Yeah, absolutely. They can find us on social media, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Wild For Teff. And that's a fantastic way to engage with us online and in social media.
Can you spell that out for folks?
Yeah, that's at WILDFORTEFF.
And from a website perspective, where do people go on the intraWebs?
They go to wildfor.co. So www.wildfor.co.
And on Amazon, they just type in, what did I type in? I think I typed in Wild For snacks and it pulled up your listing.
Yeah, Wild For Teff chips, Wild For Teff. All of those should pull it up.
Awesome. Okay, so if anyone wants to get hold of Aleem and Wild For, they can go buy a whole bunch of product off of Amazon. They can also, if they're in the New York, Connecticut, New Jersey area, run to a Whole Foods store. Your wildfor.co website, I'm guessing you'll update it as and when you decide to roll out to other stores, other regions, and that's the best way to grab hold of you. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, and also follow us on social media, and you'll definitely be in the know about new retailers and promotions as well.
Fantastic. Aleem, thank you for your time. I appreciate you. Thanks for being part of the Big Idea Food podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. This was really fun.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Big Idea Food podcast today. Great conversation with Aleem and Wild For. If you have any questions for Aleem or want to reach out to Big Idea Ventures or Wild For, you'll find contact details below this podcast or below this YouTube video. Always appreciate your feedback and comments. By the way, if there's anyone you think we should speak with in the food innovation space, please do let us know. We're always open to meeting and talking with new people doing great things in food. So thanks for your participation today. Please do like and subscribe, and maybe come back next week and watch or listen to next week's podcast. Thanks very much. Andrew, signing out. Bye-bye.